The Batman just released, and I'm a big fan of Batman. He's definitely my favorite superhero, so I thought it would be fun to do a ranking video of all the Batman films. Without further ado, let's just get into it. Joss Whedon's Justice League was just a colossal mess. I think there's a lot of unity from fans regarding this movie because everyone collectively hates it. Batman himself in this movie just felt like a really bored version of Tony Stark. There was really nothing good or memorable that was done with the character of Batman in this movie. I liked Jeremy Irons as Alfred. He was like the one good thing in the movie. J.K. Simmons was also okay as Commissioner Gordon, although he was only in it for like 2 minutes. I'll probably get some hate for this, but I can't stand Batman v Superman. Everything Batman does in this movie is motivated by unexplained prophetic dreams, and because he has these dreams, he all of a sudden decides he wants to kill Superman. He's not a methodical detective in this movie, he's a guy that does everything based on impulse and emotions, and that's not Batman to me. It's a shame Ben Affleck never got to have a standalone movie, and at this rate, it's looking like he never will. But if they decide to make it with a good director and keep Zack Snyder far away from it, I would be interested. I genuinely think Joel Schumacher was trying to be silly and make a movie based on the Silver Age of comics. It just so happened that no fans wanted a movie like this, especially at the time. Every movie after Tim Burton's film in 1989 got progressively goofier, so I completely understand the disappointment so many fans felt at the time. Looking at it in hindsight though, is it really the worst comic book movie ever made? For me, some of it works, but a lot of it doesn't, especially when the movie tries to be serious with the Alfred dying subplot and all that. The story is a huge mess, and George Clooney is pretty awful as Batman. I think if Joel Schumacher focused more on making our lead heroes more interesting and went full forward with the comedy, he could have made a decent movie. But it's kind of a weird movie in that there are attempts at seriousness in the movie, and every time the movie tries to be serious, it's a lot worse than when it's being goofy and fun. I respect Joel Schumacher because his style is completely different from anything you would have seen from superhero movies in the last 10 years or even 20 years. I was kind of surprised by how much I didn't enjoy this movie rewatching it recently. I love Michael Keaton, and some of the action is really great, but I couldn't get into the story itself. It spends so much time with the Penguin and his whole plot of earning the respect of the city, and it goes on for so long, and I just didn't care. The best scene in the movie is when Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle both realize that they are Batman and Catwoman, and they have to decide whether they should start fighting each other or not. That was riveting. It was by far the best scene. Michelle Pfeiffer is great in a lot of the movie, but I don't always like the writing of her character, especially when she's introduced as someone who wants to get laid really bad, constantly complaining about the fact that she's not married. That was really weak character development, and it really took me out of the movie. It made me not enjoy her character as much as I should have. It's a very weird mixed bag of a movie. I was thoroughly entertained by this movie when I rewatched it recently. Technically, this is my first Batman film ever because I watched it when I was really young, so it does have a bit of a nostalgic effect on me. The movie is pretty insane and fully embraces the Silver Age of comic books, while also giving us Val Kilmer as Batman, who does a really good job. I liked his relationship with Robin, even if Robin isn't written all that well. I also find it weird that this movie is kind of a Joel Schumacher reboot. Like, it's not a sequel to the Burton films, but some of the actors are the same, like Alfred and Commissioner Gordon. It seems like Warner Bros. Themselves weren't sure if this was meant to be a continuation of Burton's films or not. Jim Carrey was relentlessly entertaining as the Riddler as well. I'm glad we got him in that role. If a superhero movie came out like this today, riots would break out on the streets. As much as I like some of the darker, realistic superhero movies of the last 2 decades, there was something really special about the comedy tone of Adam West's Batman. It's not something you watch for a deep story, it's something you watch for fun escapism, and I wish more movies had ridiculous, over-the-top humor like this. A lot of the humor is genuinely clever, and unlike the Schumacher films, it doesn't try to be serious at all. It fully embraces its comedic style, and it's all the better for it. I really do wish there was more movies like this out there.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
This is a good Batman film. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that's top tier Batman. Tom Hardy as Bane is great. Christian Bale does an amazing job in this movie, and I love so much about how this movie wraps up the Nolan trilogy. However, I'm not a fan of how the film handles its villains. Bane is fantastic until the plot twist at the end of the movie, which suddenly makes Bane unimportant. Talia al Ghul's relationship with Bruce is so incredibly rushed, and I didn't feel like him womanizing her the way he did fit his character at all. It definitely feels the most like a typical superhero movie out of all the Nolan films, like with a bomb that's going to blow up the whole city, which is kind of a plot that's been done a lot. I love the ending though, and I thought Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing Robin was really smart. It's a solid ending to the trilogy, but it's definitely the weakest of the three.
You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
This movie has an excellent understanding of the Batman character. The whole movie he's shutting his friends out and willingly keeping himself isolated, which is totally accurate to what Batman is. It has a great message for kids at the end about accepting help from the people who love and care about you. Stop trying to be this manly guy that won't accept help from anyone. It definitely feels like it was written by people who were big fans of the source material. It's also extremely funny and clever, making a lot of jokes that would completely go over kids' heads. It's an excellent family film, and I highly recommend showing this to your kids if you have them. Almost every reboot of Batman starts with him already being Batman for a year or two. Nolan changed that, and Batman Begins is all about how Bruce Wayne becomes Batman, and no other movie has done that before or since. This movie really stands on its own in that way. It also really starts to show that Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne is all about keeping up appearances. Rather than being shy and elusive in public, Bale's Batman puts on a show of shallow, playboy billionaire. He obviously does it so that people won't guess that he's Batman. This is a very different approach to Bruce Wayne. It's more realistic, and it's never been done to this extent in live action. It's riveting watching Christian Bale switch from Batman to Bruce Wayne as seen by the public to Bruce Wayne being his natural self. It's also got great villains as well in Ra's al Ghul and the Scarecrow.
You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
The best part about this movie is Tim Burton's self-inserting. Tim Burton very often makes films about awkward people who are different, trying to belong in a world of very normal people. Michael Keaton is intimidating in the Batsuit, but as Bruce Wayne, he's an awkward, shy person who has trouble interacting with people in public. Not only is this relatable, but it hits home the idea that he feels much more comfortable being Batman than being Bruce Wayne. A lot of his awkwardness is played for comedy, and I like all the great humor Burton was able to utilize in this movie. Christian Bale is fantastic as Batman, but his Bruce Wayne isn't as relatable as Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne for me. Mostly because Bale's Bruce Wayne is very capable and charming, but I also love that about his performance. That doesn't necessarily mean that Keaton is better than Bale. They're just different versions of the character that both work wonders in different ways. Jack Nicholson, the legend, is also terrific as the Joker, and there's so many memorable lines and action sequences. It also has the best music of any Batman film in my opinion. This is the quintessential Batman score. I honestly think this movie is a classic. It understands the character remarkably well. It is a fantastic comic book movie. This movie takes the idea of Bruce Wayne being awkward and doubles down on it. Bruce Wayne is a straight up freak in this movie. At least Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne was able to seduce Vicky Vale, and you can tell he wants to have a social life, but Pattinson doesn't even seem to be interested in having a social life, which added so much to his portrayal of Batman. As far as I can tell, every scene in this movie had Robert Pattinson present in it, and we experience everything through his perspective, which is super great and super immersive. You really see the tragedy of the character, and the plot was able to be refreshing and different. Paul Dano is the best Riddler we've ever had, Zoe Kravitz is the best Catwoman we've ever had, Jeffrey Wright is great as Gordon, Andy Serkis is great as Alfred. This cast is incredible, and they all get their moments to shine. This also has the best action out of any Batman film, and I love how this fully embraces the detective side of the character for the first time in live action. The Riddler is perfect for that detective story, and he feels like a real person that would actually exist. Like Kevin Spacey uploading those cryptic videos where he speaks in riddles, or Donald Trump inspiring a full-on insurrection of the Capitol. The whole movie was so well done. I can't wait for Matt Reeves to knock it out of the park again with a sequel.
Send in the clowns.
I'm having a hard time deciding whether I prefer this film or The Batman, but I had to put one over the other, so I guess this is it for now. As far as I know, there is no comic story that Todd Phillips took this from. This is all his original story using some of the Batman mythos, and I find that very fascinating. It's become a very common complaint on the internet to say that this is a ripoff of Taxi Driver. Because some people say it, everyone repeats it, and it just becomes the popular thing to say about this movie. I've seen Taxi Driver, and I never got that impression. Sure, it's inspired by it, but they're both very different movies at the same time. I actually find it pretty annoying that when a film is inspired by something else, it quickly gets called a ripoff. Literally every film that ever comes out is inspired by something else, and most of the time I feel like those complaints don't really have legs to stand on. I think Joker as a film is just expertly crafted, with one of the best acting performances I've ever seen in a movie, and it does an excellent job immersing you into Arthur's chaotic world. So much so that this movie disturbed me emotionally more than most movies are able to achieve. It's just one of those movies that really got under my skin the first time I saw it, and yeah, that's really impressive for a movie to do. Frickin' duh. This should be a surprise to no one. I rewatched all the Batman movies recently, and this one feels the shortest. It blows by and it's impossible to turn away from it. There isn't a single dull moment. The entire movie is basically just the Joker trying to get everyone in Gotham to betray their values and become hypocrites, including Batman, and it's great. We don't know why he's doing this, but it's amazing. There's really not much I can say about this movie that no one has said before. It's one of the greatest movies of all time, and it ultimately ends with Joker winning and getting what he wanted. And I find that awesome. Like, this movie doesn't have a happy ending. Thanks for watching, everyone. I made a short film in 2021. Check it out by clicking the link in the description. I'm also working on a Christmas movie, and I have an Instagram and Facebook account for that project, so go on over and follow it. Also in the description. Thanks, everyone.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.